During COVID, I felt quite unwell, but I couldn't get an appointment with the doctor. And I tried for months and months. And then I moved to Kings Nympton in with Bob Gamak, and was thinking, oh, this is a fantastic start to life. You know, my daughters had left home, and I was really, really excited at this sort of new chapter of my life. And then I found a lump in my breast, or huge, the lump had got bigger, and so I insisted on seeing a doctor. And unfortunately, they found that I'd got breast cancer, which had spread a little bit to my liver, but mainly sort of throughout all of my bones, including my spine and the long bones. And yeah, it's pretty beastly. But I have to say, we're so lucky living in North Devon, or in Devon, because the treatment I had, it's, you know, I've got palliative care, and they've been absolutely amazing. I've had scans, lots of scans, and we get the results within about 10 days. And lots of the country have to wait for months. So I started off having docetaxel, which I must stress that everybody reacts differently to medications. Unfortunately for me, I was really, really poorly. But my daughter Izzy delayed going to university, and she looked after me. So I had docetaxel, which sort of stopped things from growing. And then I've had various therapies to try and halt the progression. But unfortunately, the last one I had has permanently damaged my lungs. So they've had to stop all therapy except for hormone therapy. So I continue to have 3 monthly scans, but it's not an if it starts again, it's when is it going to start again. But my last scan was stable, so I get to have spring and to enjoy life is brilliant in the spring, if it would stop raining.
So living in the moment.
Yeah, I do, and I also, I feel quite lucky because I worked as a counsellor for years, and I'm not a hypocrite. So I follow lots of the sort of advice that I've given other people and work quite hard to keep good mental health. The way that we look at things in life is so important. And I'm not a cup half full, I'm a cup completely full. And yeah, that's me. I feel really blessed for being alive. I think one thing I'm really, really lucky about is that, I've said that I live with Bob, and he has been absolutely amazing, and his family and his friends. And I think feeling secure, as soon as I told him I was poorly, he really reassured me about that I was secure where I lived, and that he would, it was my daughter's home as well, and would be after I died. And that has made a massive difference to me.
And it's a lovely place to live as well, isn't it? I mean, South Ash is just a fantastic position.
It's wonderful because I'm surrounded by wildlife. Bob farms in a way that isn't greedy. He appreciates the natural world, and he also appreciates the fact that he needs to provide food for the nation and an income for himself, but he seems to have got the balance right. So I get up in the morning and the house is surrounded by hares, and the bird song is terrific, and we've got barn owls flying past in the evenings, and it's just absolutely magical. So nature is really important to me.
And restorative?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I've got my my bed outside. I call it my deathbed because it's where I quite like to die. My house is really amazing. It's a little sort of cabin, and there's an oak tree growing up on the side of it. And half of the oak tree, the branches go over my house, and half of it go over my garden, because I'm a great gardener. I'm not a very successful gardener, but I garden sort of for wildlife and for insects, really. And so I lie underneath that oak tree, and there's so much life around me, and I feel very much part of nature, not in a sort of hippy-dippy way, but in that way that I think people in the countryside quite often have, which is we're really aware that we're born, we live, we die, and that's normal and natural. And it can be a bit scary sometimes, but I think it's, again, a gift to be able to not have this sort of constant death anxiety. And I think if you're connected with sort of how nature works, it's really comforting and reassuring, yeah.
Particularly in a situation like yours.
Absolutely, and again, it's that vulnerability, isn't it? That I can sit in my garden. My daughter's dug me a pond to look at, so I can watch dragonflies coming around and then birds sweeping down and eating the dragonflies, and I can have all my defences down and be just peaceful, filled with the good stuff in life. Yeah, so people are very kind to me. You know, and there's something about, I've strode through life being sort of strong and independent, not needing other people and bashing through everything. And actually there's something about being in a vulnerable situation if you're lucky enough to be in the right situation, you can receive other people's help and support and kindness. Like, you know, my daughters they're wonderful anyway, but the fact that my daughters, I see that caring side of them and how they would be with other people, and I experience that, and it's a gift. Yeah.
So you seem very accepting. Did you go through the sort of classic stages of grief after your diagnosis?
No, I think it was slightly complicated for me because my best friend Louise, who I've known since I was 7, she died of breast cancer a year after I was diagnosed. And so I think I was, first of all, the first year of being diagnosed, I was very, very poorly. And so that sort of knocked me out in a way. And actually for me, chemo was like it was like the veil between life and death was really thin. And all I wanted to do was cross over to it because it was for me, it was really ghastly. And so sliding away was a much easier option than staying alive. And then when I started feeling better, Louise was starting to get more poorly. And so I think I was focusing on her process. And then I think the grief I've had, has been about Louise. Also, you know, when I trained to be a counsellor, I did extra training around death, dying and grief process. And again, it's appreciating the fact that it's inevitable. You know, logically, to get upset about dying, it's just a daft thing to do, really, because it's, you know, dying I was 56 when I was diagnosed. So what upset me was that when I was a young child, I really wanted to become an old lady. I was quite a miserable child. I didn't have a very happy childhood. But there were elderly ladies who I may have only met for a day, who really inspired me. Artists, poets, bossy old sort of great auntie types, that sort of person. And I always used to think, keep going, Claire, or it'll be okay because you're going to be one of these mad, eccentric old ladies. And I think that was something that I struggled with. And also, I think the other thing is that when I was diagnosed with actually having stage 4 cancer and how serious it was, then the first thing I said to my oncologist was, well, thank goodness for suicide. And I found that really comforting, is the fact that actually I don't necessarily need to go through a prolonged dying process at the very end of life, that I can take matters into my own hands, although I'd really rather not do that. Yeah.
So what is the prognosis? What does the future look like?
Well, I mean, I've been really lucky because I asked the oncologist how long I would likely live for if I didn't have any treatment at all, because the idea of chemotherapy sort of filled me with horror, really. And he said probably a few months. It was quite fast-growing cancer. And he said, but if you respond well, then we could probably get 5 years for you. And that's what I've had. I've had 5 years. So I've got my daughter Chloe has got through university and is working as an occupational therapist. And my other daughter Izzy is in her 4th year and is about to get her master's and be a soil scientist. So for me, those have been really important markers to, to be able to support my daughters. Yeah.
And tell me about, I mean, I don't know what you would term it. Is it advocacy? Is it spokespersonship for the assisted dying bill?
Yeah, so I was approached by an organisation called My Death, My Decision, which campaigned for assisted dying. And then they asked me to do a few interviews with the media. So I've been doing that. And I've also, one thing I quite enjoyed was I was invited by the Humanist Society to go to Parliament and to talk to peers and MPs as part of a panel around assisted dying. And I found that really interesting because there was a representative of Dignitas there, and then there was another chap that had been a GP in London and helped people who were religious in a religious sect to end their life when they were very poorly years ago, and various other people on a panel. So that was really, really interesting. So I doing this sort of having a camera pointed at me and media-y things that have been my sort of idea of a nightmare. But I come from a campaigning background. My granddad campaigned against homelessness and spent the last 20 years of his life doing that. And I think it's in my genes and I want to sort of make a difference if I can. Yeah, to give people the choice. It's about being part of a civilised society that affords people the same option as animals get. We're part of a farming community. If we allowed animals to suffer, then people would be prosecuted. But we don't allow people to have that choice, and I find that extraordinary. It seems uncivilised to me and just a bit stupid, really.
So assisted dying is a route you would choose if it were available?
Absolutely, because I am actually aspirational about my death. I know, the bill that's been passed is being scuppered at the moment, so, and it probably wouldn't have happened anyway because we're so slow at doing anything in this country. But yes, I had, You know, when I close my eyes and imagine what I'd like, it would be being at home, which is what most people want, I think, and being in my garden underneath my oak tree with my daughters there. I'd like to hear one of them playing her guitar and singing if she could manage it, like people holding my hands, and hearing people, life going on. I'd like my, few close friends to be enjoying a meal, and to hear, I think it's about like sensing, other than necessarily seeing everything, is the sound of the birds, feeling the wind on your face. And it's about just letting go in just a gentle way, I think. Yeah.
And is that achievable?
No. It would be with assisted dying. And also the other thing to...
But why not?
So it's not achievable because it would be illegal for other people to be... If I took my own life and there were other people present, then as the law stands at the moment, they could be being accused of assisted in a suicide, and there are prison sentences for that. It's very unlikely that somebody will be prosecuted, but undoubtedly they would be investigated for months and months, and sometimes years with these investigations. If you're trying to sort of manage the fact that somebody's died and the grieving process, and then you're being investigated for being part of that death, then that would be a terrible thing. When I worked as a counsellor, I worked a lot around people who'd been bereaved. And one of the things that was really noticeable, that there's sort of normal and natural grief, and then there's complex grief, and then there's trauma. And a lot of people who were exposed to suffering at the end of a loved one's life and who witnessed that are actually traumatised. And that's very, very different. It works differently in our brain than the normal grief process, or even complex grief. And one of the reasons that me having a good death, or a death that isn't around me suffering, is because I don't want other people to be traumatised. I'm not doing it some sort of huge selfless, I don't feel pressurised in that way, but that is an important part of my sort of process and the conclusions I've come to. Yeah.
And obviously your daughters have been a part of that process?
Yes, so absolutely. They completely understand where I'm coming from. They also were aware of this sort of natural cycle. Chloe's worked with people at the end of life, and she's worked in wards in the NHS where people have been begging to be put out of, give me something to end this, and she's had to manage that. And neither of them want me to die. They want me to be around for every moment. No, it's something that they completely support, and I think they're really confused as to why anyone would think it was a bad idea.
So, given their support of your position, do you think that would mean they would be prepared to take the risk of prosecution and investigation if they were with you when you died?
I wouldn't put them in that situation. Not in a million years. No.
Even if they said, look...
Begged. No. I wouldn't. No. I've always, my daughter's the most important things ever. I say things because out of it, not just people, out of absolutely everything. And I want to safeguard them, and being exposed to the legal process in this country, as it's so grindingly slow. If they were questioned for an hour and then that's it, perhaps. Yeah. But no, I understand how grief works, and anything that interrupts that is a bad thing. Yeah.
So have you, in your mind, worked out how you can do this without putting your family
Yeah,
at risk of prosecution?
yeah, I'd have to be alone. But there are two things. So with assisted dying, I would have the choice as to whether to have help at a time and a place of my choosing, or I could just decide to let nature take its course and to do what's done now, which is to be given painkillers for people to stop feeding me and giving me water, and life in that way. But having the choice means that I could wait till the last minute. I could eke out every moment of this sort of wonderful gift of life. The difficulty I have with suicide is the fact that I'd have to do it earlier than I want it, because there's lots of cancer, in my neck, and if that grows, I won't be able to move, so I'm stuffed really. So in a way it would end up shortening my life. And the other thing is that, I would have to make sure that I'm alone. And I find that really, really, really sad. And actually, I think it's more than feeling sad. I feel hurt by being forced into that situation. When you try in life to be a decent person or it's not even trying, when you just feel like you are a reasonable sort of person, to be sort of forced into that choice I just think it's cruel, really cruel.
So what decision will you make?
So if the cancer starts growing again, I can have a genetic test to see if I can tolerate one other chemo that's available. And if I can tolerate that, I will probably do that for my daughters, because, I lone parent my daughters and they haven't got family. So I will hang on for as long as possible. But if I can't have that, then if I start feeling tingling in my arms or something like that, or I start feeling like, it's moved into my brain, then that's when, I'll take my own life. Yeah. That's not nice for Bob and the emergency services, is it? None of that. It's not nice. It's just unpleasant, when actually the alternative is that it could be so pleasant and civilised.
Well, I think the scenario you describe, with the family there and at a time of your choosing and a place of your choosing, that does sound like a civilised way to...
And I love my food. The fact that I could get some food and, it's all the good stuff in life, and then just gradually, it's like, the sun setting, it does it gradually, it doesn't just fall out of the sky.
And what's the significance of May 26 in terms of the legislation?
That's when it runs out of time. So the bill at the moment is being held up in the Lords, House of Lords, which is, actually, it makes me furious. I am livid about it, because the vast majority of the population wants some form of assisted dying. Parliament is, elected representatives have supported that. And actually, yes, narrowly, but it's also a very conservative bill compared to other countries. The parameters are much, much more narrow than other countries. And whether it's narrow or not, I think you do need to have a look at the fact that consistently over 70% of people support assisted dying. And that is what people need to focus on, really. We're not talking about the 51% that support it. It's well over 70%. So 7 members of the House of Lords are blocking the legislation at the moment, and I think they'll carry on doing it. I think that they're going to kill the bill as they want to do. I can understand that, the purpose of the House of Lords is to look at every single detail and try and improve on what the Commons hand over. They've put proposals in of things like insisting that everybody have a pregnancy test, whether they're male or female, whether they've had a hysterectomy, whether they're 99 or 9. Well, a 9-year-old wouldn't get assisted dying, but you can see what I mean. That's insulting. It's incredibly degrading, insulting to the whole conversation, because I really respect the fact that lots of people would not want this choice. And I wouldn't dream of trying to influence those people. We all have freedom to make choices, and I completely respect that. So the fact that 7 people are seeking to stop something that actually we're dying. We're not, it's not. So I used to work as a counsellor, and a lot of people who came to see me wanted to end their own lives. They were suffering. I would never ever condone assisted dying for people who were suffering mentally, because I used to talk to them and say, what's the reason for not taking your own life? And they'd say things like, it would upset somebody, or that sort of thing. And actually the argument I used was, it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem, because to me that's the logic of it. And then we used to discuss what isn't a temporary problem, and really the only one we'd come up with it was terminal illness. And that's me. I am dying. And so the fact that other people are interfering in that and actually are saying, we don't care about you and people like you, Claire. Just be quiet and suffer. It pisses me off.
And it gives you the kind of get up and go to appear on TV programmes and in the
Absolutely.
Commons and so on.
It's about, I've spent a lot of my professional life helping people not to take their own life and to realise that, life can change and it's precious, and this is it, so why not have a go at it? And then for people to actually, I think partly that's what I find difficult, is there's sort of like people in the disabled lobby who've conflated assisted dying with things to do with disability, or they've conflated it with the idea that some people just want to die anyway. And that is something, I think the campaigning part of me comes from being quite angry. And if we're angry about something, sometimes it means we need to take action. And so I think that sort of motivated me, and And also, I'm not in paid employment. I can't work anymore, and I really, really, really miss it. And so sort of having purpose and meaning in life and feeling like you can it's something I'm very unlikely to benefit from, but feeling like you've made a difference to the lives of other people is just so rewarding. Yeah.